Hey, y'all, and welcome to Routeless, the podcast for the career dreamers, the late bloomers, and the what am I doing with my life crowd. I'm your host, Grace Kasprak, and here we get real about the messy, winding, and totally unpredictable journey of figuring it all out. Each week, I sit down with someone who's somewhere along the path, some who found their path, and some who are still paving it. And we talk about the real stuff: doubt, risk, passion, purpose, all of it. So if you're craving clarity, connection, or just a reminder that you're not alone in this, you're in the right place. So let's get into it. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Routeless. This obviously looks a little bit different, okay? Typically, I'm here with a guest. We're up in the office. We have the whole studio up there. And we are starting to implement solo episodes. So every other week, I'm going to be sitting down with someone. We're going to be chatting about their life, their story. And then on the opposing weeks, we're just going to have a solo little episode talking about something on my mind. And if you haven't already seen, if you're watching, okay, great. If you're not, maybe you should be, because we have the cutest little dumpling that's going to join us. We have Raylan here. She's going to say hello. She's going to wave. Hello, everyone. She's just going to be hanging out on the bed while we're chatting. She's kind of a Velcro dog, and I don't even have an excuse. She was not a COVID dog, like at all. I've had her since I was in college, since my sophomore year. So I was, how old am I then? Like 20, which is crazy to think that I got a dog when I was 20. And she didn't end up being my parents' dogs. I feel like that's such the normal, is anyone in college gets a dog and it ends up being their parents' dog, right? They're like, oh, too much responsibility for college. No, I loved the excuse to be like, I have to go home. I have to take care of my dog. Like, I needed any excuse to be a grandma at the age of 20, which is diabolical. Anyway, we are in a new space. We're going to be filming these solo episodes and kind of just jumping in here. Today, I want to talk about embarrassment. Embarrassment is something that's so key in my life. And honestly, between you and me, therapy has been so eye-opening to the topic of embarrassment for me. I've quickly realized that I think that's my biggest red flag. Is I hate being embarrassed. And as much as I hate being embarrassed, I think that is like one of my touchiest points, right? And I think in anyone, your touchiest point is probably single-handedly the thing you need to work on the most. Like, for example, me, I hate being embarrassed more than your average Joe. It actually brings out all of my flaws when I get embarrassed. I get flustered. I get extremely unconfident. I can't deal with it. And it's hard to embarrass me, which is kind of a good thing. But I think it's also like a tough skin action to basically put up a front and say it's hard to embarrass me because there's only certain things that really like push my buttons as far as embarrassment goes. But not the point here. So kind of like, a little vulnerability there towards why I want to talk about this. But the more I dug into it and the more I thought about it, I think one of the biggest things that holds people back in life, it's not failure. It's embarrassment. I think from such a young age, we are taught constantly, don't be afraid to fail. Like, failure is a good thing. And it's like talked about this thing like it's a big feat to do, Like, it's one of the biggest things that holds people back is that failure component, is that failure of fear, which for some that may be true. But I think the more I thought about it, the less I was fearful of failure and the more I was fearful of embarrassment. I'm not one to walk around and admit or even like mentally think that I 100% care what other people think. I am pretty genuine, at least I would like to think I am. I'm pretty true to myself and I'm not really afraid to be myself, whether you like me or not. But to a certain extent, right? Everyone cares, even 1%, what other people think. no matter how old you are, no matter what stage of life you are, no matter what your character is, there's at least a small part of you, at least one part of your life that where you care what other people think of you. And I think what that feeds into is that picture of looking stupid. I know for me, I really like to look put together. Not physically, but like my life. Sure, physically maybe too. But sometimes I'd be going out looking like a hot mess. I like to look like I have my whole life together, whether that be my career, whether that be my marriage, whether that be my friends, my family, all of my relationships. Like you name it, I like to give off the perception that I have it all together. When has that ever reigned true for anyone? No one has it together, and saying that is one thing, but actually accepting that and letting that take refuge into your soul and your life is a whole nother ballgame. Anyway, so back to that point, right? Afraid of looking stupid. And that stupidity, that fear of looking stupid ends up in embarrassment, right? Then on top of that, like embarrassment keeps you from so many things. It can keep you from your purpose. It can keep you from, I don't know, starting a business, from posting online. I think that's a massive one nowadays. People are so fearful of what other people are going to think online. Like, okay, valid. You know, like back in the Wild West days, people weren't scared of doing that because that wasn't part of the technology back then, you know? Nowadays, you can do one thing and be so fearful because you messed up, right? And now you're like, oh, what if someone filmed that? What if someone posts that? You know, someone is posting my failures for not just the cul-de-sac to see, not just my closest friends to see because I tripped on a curb and fell flat on my face, not because I made a career mistake and it turned out to be bad and now like my previous coworkers now know. No, like thousands, on hundreds of thousands, on millions of people are now going to criticize my failure. And not only criticize my failure, but maybe they're going to criticize me on that one failure out of a slew of successes in my life. And that one failure may end up to describe me for those people. And as much as that is exhausting, right? And it runs through your head every single time, I think embarrassment is part of the game nowadays, you know? I think as any person, mentor, older person has told you, like, become good at failing, become good at being embarrassed, become comfortable with being embarrassed, become comfortable with trying new things and being so bad at them at first. And I think that embarrassment, I think it honestly might be a sign that you're doing something right. If you are embarrassed, that means you have opened a door where this is uncomfortable for you, right? This is new for you. This is out of your normal comfort zone. And I think that means you're doing something right because nothing great ever happened from being comfortable. And at least that's how I like to think about it. I think like point number 2, kind of outside of that whole afraid of looking stupid, all that kind of jazz. Let's look at like your actual brain perspective. Like humans are wired for belonging, right? Humans want to be a villager. And if you don't know what I mean by that, like being a villager is you have to be a villager to be a part of a village, right? You want to be able to help your fellows and your fellows help you. And you want to be a core component of your environment. You want to be a useful component of your environment. You want other people to show up for you and you want to be able to show up for them, right? That's what being a villager in the village is. You can't be a villager. You can't be in the village. There we go. Okay, let me clarify. You can't be in the village without being a villager. So if you're taking from other people and you're never giving, you're not being a villager. You're just being a visitor. And to be a villager, you have to be able to give to your community. You know, you're wired to want to belong. And within that is your brain is also wired to be comfortable. I cannot say that enough. Like, your brain naturally wants to keep you safe. And what safe is comfortable, because your brain doesn't like to do new things because it doesn't know if that is a safe environment or not. And embarrassment is typically pretty uncomfortable. Embarrassment, putting yourself out there, trying new things, being bad at something, like opening up a business or finding a new passion or whatever it may be. Rarely do you ever pop out, do something once, and you're just incredible at it, right? It usually takes quite a bit of, really groveling into that passion or really persisting into whatever that thing is to be able to become good. You very rarely just pop out good at something. And therefore, there might be a percentage of embarrassment within that task or that new job or that new hobby or passion or purpose or whatever it is. And therefore, that embarrassment to your brain is uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is dangerous for your brain. It's also like, your prefrontal cortex, right? Like, yeah, it fuses at some point, and therefore, when it is fused, it is even more vulnerable to uncomfortability. Before your brain has prefrontal cortex has fully fused, that's why they say like kids are invincible, right? Because kids like have so little fear. They don't recognize that, though, that's dangerous. When your prefrontal cortex fuses, your brain now understands that is dangerous and we don't want to do that. And so I would even counter and say that as an adult, it's even more important to do things that are uncomfortable for you, because it pressures your brain to start to understand that uncomfortability, you can find comfort in that. You can be safe in that. Now, to a degree, right? Like, if you're going hiking in the middle of the woods, like, it would probably be smart to take bear spray, okay? It would probably be wise to do so. But if you think about that, is that going to stop you from going for a run? If you were a kid, if you were a teenager, you wouldn't even think about damn bear spray. You wouldn't even think about it, right? You'd be like, oh, here I go. Unless you're one of the outstanding, like, very wise individuals as teenagers. I sure was not one. As an adult, you think, oh, I want to go for a run in the woods. That would be beautiful. And then you're like, oh, well, what about bears? And then you're like, I don't have bear spray. Maybe I shouldn't go for a run, right? It's keeping you from that task. All to say, before I keep going on this, because I could beat a dead horse with this one, like, embarrassment is uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is dangerous for your brain. And you need to be comfortable with doing the uncomfortable. All to say. It's also like, to wrap that up, when you do something uncomfortable, it's also a threat to your belonging, right? So, in your village of people, you do something new in your brain because it's uncomfortable, because it's dangerous. It's also a threat if you will still be a villager, if you will still mesh with your village. And I think that is a really important component to recognize, because ultimately, if your village is the village you're supposed to be in, your village is going to support you, even if you fail, even if it's embarrassing. Your village is going to be able to look back on it in 5 years and laugh about it. But if your village is what's holding you back, you might need a new village. You might need to find a different village. And that is hard to accept because, yet again, you want to belong, even if you're in the wrong village, which that's a tough pill to swallow. Being in a village that you're not supposed to be in, or is not healthy, or is not belonging, or is not supportive for you, leaving that, I mean, talk about uncomfortable. talk about dangerous for your brain. Like, that's a lot to compute, and that's a big hill to get over. Third point, right? I think especially today, which I'm not helping in this situation because I already said that I like to be one of those people that portrays that I have it all together. The concept of everyone knows what they're doing is, I think, the biggest lie in our society nowadays. No one knows what they're doing. The majority of the time, everyone is typically flying by the seat of their pants, trying to just put out a fire that's new every single day. And the concept that everyone has it all together and everyone knows what they're doing is diabolical, because that's never reigned true. Not once. Not once. You could ask anyone. You could ask an old individual. You could ask the elderly. Those kind of go hand in hand. You could ask a middle-aged person super successful in corporate America. You could ask a 20-year-old that's self-employed. No one knows what they're doing. And if they say they do, hot take, they're lying. They are straight up lying. Sure, there are moments of your life where you can say, I know what I'm doing because I've done this before, right? Okay, I think there's also some wisdom in that because they've done it before, right? They've been there before. Can you interpret this is exactly what's going to happen this time? What you did before is going to rinse and repeat identically? No. Sometimes, maybe you'll get lucky. Other times, you might have to approach it a little bit differently than last time, because when is anything copy paste, rinse, repeat, unless you are like an analyst with data, which maybe even not there, because can I really say that I've truly been an analyst with data? No. And y'all can prove me wrong. If there's something that is copy paste, rinse, repeat, sure. But rarely is that occasion. Probably the outstanding aspect is different than last time. The only people that have the wisdom to know how to approach something is someone who has done it once before. On the counter, right? The devil's advocate of what I just said. Do I think that they know how to approach it 100%? No. Do I think that their brain is screaming at them that this is dangerous? Not as much as the first time. Right? Because exposure therapy, the more you do something, the more your brain becomes comfortable with it. Therefore, if they've been in an uncomfortable state before and then they, went back and did it again, their brain is like, we've done this before. Is it identical? Probably not. Will it be the exact same outcome? Maybe, maybe not. But at the same time, your brain is not as scared as it once was. And so you, yet again, have to get over that hurdle of that uncomfortability, that embarrassment for the first time. And that's such a big hurdle to cross. I mean, you basically have to become comfortable with just being terribly bad at something. Terribly bad. Let's throw it back. Super surface level topic, right? I have some of the worst hand-eye coordination of anyone I've ever met in my life. The only sport that I could sufficiently play growing up, volleyball. That was it. Because it surrounded me when I was a child. Therefore, I had to get good at it. So I was originally horrible. Now, I'm sufficient. I can play pickup. I can have some fun. Am I over here like my sister-in-law playing pro in Europe? Not even close. But I'm sufficient. I can hang. I was so bad in the beginning. I remember being utterly embarrassed. And let's keep in mind, when I first started playing this, I was, fifth grade. How old are you in fifth grade? Like 11, 10. So talk about kids feeling invincible. I was a kid that felt invincible, and I still felt embarrassed, okay? I was so embarrassed that I was so bad. And one of my best friends naturally picked it up a little bit better than I did. And she excelled at it. She played in college. So like she went far on to do it. But it took so much of me humbling myself to go into that situation with her and let her teach me and let her kind of show me the ropes a little bit so that I could get better. It also took from her perspective, like knowing how to handle me as a human, right? I mean, we were best friends. We knew each other pretty well. And she also knew I'm a stubborn individual. And she also knew that, like, yeah, I, as a kid, got embarrassed if I was bad at something because it never feels good. And so it was a kindness from her approach to be like, you know what, she's not as good as me, but we're gonna do this, we're gonna play this, we're gonna have some fun, and I'm not gonna like ream her for what she could be doing better. Now, if she's struggling with something and she either asks me for help or she looks like she needs it and she's open to it, will I help her? Yes. And so, all to say, right? I went on to play volleyball for like the next 4 years, and I'm still sufficient. I'm still adequate in the sport of volleyball. Now, you throw me into pickleball, you throw me into tennis, I will thoroughly admit I am the worst at tennis. I can't hit the ball to save my life, and if I do hit it, it flies over the fence, okay? I am not very successful at tennis. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Now, that's a sport that I'm not willing to become better at. I don't want to be a good tennis player because it's not where I want to stick myself. It's not where I want to invest my time, right? So it's also picking and choosing, where do you want to be good? Where do you want to excel? What is worth it? What's the payoff? Is it worth it for you to be really bad and feel embarrassment in this to then become better? For example, this podcast is pretty fresh. Like, it's not old. Now, do I know that prospectively, if there's one thing I can do is talk? Yes. Podcasting is a whole different ballgame. Like, I have to keep my thoughts in check the entire time. I have to very much on my feet decide, is that something I want to say? Is that something I shouldn't say? Is that a direction I want to go in? Is that a direction I don't want to go in? Am I talking on this point for too long? Probably. It's a lot more than just sitting down and talking. It's how can I have a clear angle? Or how can I have a good question to ask this person and have it be fluid without any weird pauses? Sure, I can edit things out, but I mean, at the end of the day, you want it to be fluid. The less you have to edit, the better. Anyway, not the point. We're always learning. We're always growing. Ask anyone. Ask anyone. I mean, I think one thing that really changed my perspective on this was as I got older, I realized my mom is living life for the first time too. There's things that she does for the first time that as a daughter, even I can come into play and be like, wait, I've done this before. Do you want empathy or do you want advice? Because I've been in this position before. Maybe not the exact one, maybe not feeling the exact way that you do, but I have lived through a similar situation. And what do you need from me? And I think that's a really humbling situation to be in because you realize that everyone's just trying to figure it out and no one truly, truly knows what they're doing. Ever. Never. They might have wisdom, they might have insight, but they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Something could happen and throw their entire life off of a whim, and they're just as humble and just as vulnerable as you. And that's just how it is because life has a funny way of handing things to you. And I mean, life is full of ups and downs, and that's unavoidable. Anyway, next point. Let's look at my notes so I can move on from that. This one's kind of fun. The embarrassment tax, okay? Just came up with this today, so let's see if this hits. The embarrassment tax is the price you pay for growth. If you want to grow in something, the tax for that is being embarrassed in some way, shape, or form. People who succeed are people who simply pay the embarrassment tax faster, which I thought was so interesting when I sat down and was putting these notes down. Was yes, okay. You want to be good at something, you have to be bad at it first, and you have to be willing to be bad at it, and you have to accept that you're bad at it to be able to grow. The more topics you want to be good at, the more embarrassment you are going to experience, the faster you can get through the embarrassment. First, because your brain now understands, okay, I'm embarrassed. This isn't as bad as it was the first time. Therefore, I can hold on to it and I can let it go faster. Secondarily, I've gotten from embarrassment to success before. How can I shorten this timeline? How can I take out some of these unnecessary steps, right? It's like running a race for the first time. Let's say run a half marathon. I just ran one of those like last month. It was my first one ever, right? It took so much trial and error. Let's also start by saying I could not even run a mile like a year ago without huffing and puffing and wanting to pass out. And I then, a year later ran 13.2, however long it is, miles. And with not ease, it was hard, but I never once felt like how I did when I first was running my first mile and thought I was going to die, thought my heart was going to explode. Now, this took so much trial and error, right? Because I have the metabolism of a horse, okay? And that was the trickiest part for me, was I need to stay fueled. I need to have energy throughout this entire run. And I also have a sensitive tummy, okay? So what can I eat? What can I try out? How can I sustain myself for this long? And the more I did it, the quicker I ran, right? Because the more fuel that I had, the more energy I had. And so it was trial and error. It was like, okay, I can run up to 3 miles. And then once I hit 3, then I need to take my first little snack. And then every 2 miles after that, I need to take a snack. How many runs did that take me to figure that out? So many runs. There were so many runs where I would get to like mile 8, I'd be out of snacks and I would be dead. I would be dead because I didn't have water. I didn't have snacks. I was out of breath. I hadn't trained hills. You name it. There were so many components. Now, did I do my research on this half marathon? Did I know it was going to be exceptionally hilly? Yes. Did I know it was going to be hard? Yes. Because apparently the Austin half marathon is a very difficult one, which I had no clue when I signed up. And if I did have any clue before I signed up, I wouldn't have signed up for it. Not the point here. The point is there were so many different components that I had to figure out, right? It's also a mental game. Can I run 13 miles? Can I mentally know that I can achieve that, right? And how can I sustain myself to get there? Anyway, all to say, I ran it. I had enough energy. I had enough water. Had enough electrolytes. I had all of these things planned out. I knew I had to get up 3 hours before so I could eat a whole breakfast, or else I was not going to survive. And now I've done it. I succeeded in it, right? And so I went through all of that embarrassment of not being able to run a mile, of not having enough snacks and dying, of literally there were some runs where I was so exhausted that I would sit down on a park bench and lay down for a few minutes because I was like, this sucks. This sucks. There were points where I don't care what you believe in, right? But at some point when you are running and you're running a long distance, you get like delusional, okay? Especially if you don't have enough water and snacks. There were multiple times where I was running and I was like, you know what? As a Christian, Jesus is a big motivator, right? I'm like, Jesus is at that tree 300 yards in front of me. And I'm like, I just got to make it to the tree. And then I'd look another 300 yards and I'd be like, okay, there's Jesus. Run to him there. And that was like how I could motivate myself to get through that part of the run. And So I think there's multiple components to this, the embarrassment tax. It's, now I've done this once, so now I know I can get there faster because I've already done it once, right? Probably your worst half marathon time is going to be your first one. From then on out, you know what to expect. You know how to avoid maybe some of the conflicts that are coming up. You know how to prepare for them when they do show up. Doesn't mean it makes it easier? No. But can you be better prepared? Probably. So there's so many different components to the embarrassment tax, but you can't be successful without paying the embarrassment tax, is my hot take. And the more embarrassed you are, the better, right? And so I think it takes a lot of reframing in that manner. It takes understanding that, hey, my brain is going to hate this, and my brain is not the most important thing here. It's like, okay, what's his name? David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me guy. Do you think there was like a plethora of moments where that man was like, his brain was telling him, I cannot do this. I cannot do this for another second. Yes. I mean, the man, he ran on like 2 broken, tibias or something like that? I don't know. Some craziness. He ran an ultra with like broken legs, basically. There were an infinite amount of moments where that man was like, I cannot do this anymore. His brain said that. Did he listen to his brain? No. It's mind over matter, right? And I think that mental toughness nowadays, this is going to be, some of y'all are going to hate this. As society, we have gotten so comfortable with being comfortable. And we haven't brought in the importance of being uncomfortable. And I think from a mental health standpoint, there's a lot more to deal with nowadays. I think, yes, humans are weak, but I think that's genetic, right? That's built in us from the time that God created us. Humans are weak. That is literally why God is strong. I think humans are capable of strength. And I think that is something that is not normal in today's society. I think that's why you see so many like fitness influencers standing out so heavily right now, because they're some of the few people, take that with a grain of salt, they're some of the only publicized few people that are doing things that are super uncomfortable, and they're trying to normalize that. They're trying to, get other people and make it more accessible and make it more normal to do these uncomfortable things. I think there's so many things in our life that has taken out the uncomfortable aspect of life because we're obsessed with making everything comfortable. It's like, these are the most comfortable sheets. You'll sleep the best. Like, pay $300 and your sleep will improve and you'll never have to have an uncomfortable night of sleep ever again. There's more weight loss supplements, injections, whatever it may be, you name it, than ever before. Because all to say, can those supplements, can those injections help some people who have health deficiencies? Yes. Hand to God. Yes, I think some of those items are super helpful for the people that need it, right? There's also a grouping of people who misuse it, who use it for vanity reasons, because there is a lack of discipline with being uncomfortable. They don't want to be uncomfortable. No one wants to be uncomfortable. Some people are just better at it because they've done it more. And all to say, I can already hear the people coming at me with saying like, well, those people might be uncomfortable in different ways. Yeah, right? We can all be uncomfortable in different ways. But unless you've been uncomfortable in the way that you need, then you're not going to get better at it, right? If you want to lose 50 pounds, it's not going to be naturally. That's not going to be a comfortable process. It's going to be super uncomfortable. Talk about embarrassment tax. There's very few things that are more embarrassing than going into the gym and have no clue what you're doing. Hat off to the people that do it. Like, that is probably one of the most uncomfortable and vulnerable places. All to say that, if that is something that your brain is not comfortable with, embarrassment in that manner, in that physical exercise department, your brain naturally is going to be like, let's do the comfortable thing. Let's take the meds. Let's get the shots. Let's take the pills to lose the weight. It's not a matter of me discussing the topic, right? It doesn't matter if it's weight loss. It doesn't matter if it's eating healthy. It doesn't matter if it's journaling, if it's such a simple habit of waking up with your alarm. Like, it doesn't matter what the topic is. The point of that is every department, every new venture, every new purpose, every new conviction, every new whatever it may be comes with a territory of embarrassment. And I think as a society, we have gotten comfortable with not being uncomfortable. We have gotten comfortable with seeking out what will make this journey that is meant to be uncomfortable, comfortable. And I think that is something we should do less of. I think we should be uncomfortable. I think we should be embarrassed, because how else are you going to grow and be able to tell your kids in 5 years, well, I walked 10 miles and 10 feet of snow to school every day. Like the whole, we make fun of it, but like truly, okay, right? Like they had different challenges than we do. But they still did uncomfortable things, and you can brag about it. It's like, I ran a half marathon. I got the medal. I'll be able to brag about it for the rest of my life. Cool. Will I? Probably not. But I could, because I did something uncomfortable. And so to wrap it up, first saying, I think one of the biggest things that holds people back in life, it's not failure. It's embarrassment, because embarrassment comes well before failure. Yeah. So that's our first solo episode here on Routeless. What'd y'all think? Actually, don't tell me. I don't care, because I'm doing something uncomfortable right now. I might be slightly embarrassed right now. So let me be embarrassed. Let me be uncomfortable, because maybe in a year and a half, I'll be way better at this. And this is just my intro to being uncomfortable and embarrassed. And I would hope that you would look at your neighbor who's doing something uncomfortable and embarrassing and cheer them on, right? Because when you do something uncomfortable and embarrassing, I would hope that they would cheer you on. Just some fodder, some food for thought. Take it in. Think about it. And we will be back next week. Let's say goodbye, Raylan. Goodbye. Oh, she was a sheep. Goodbye, everybody. We had fun. Thank you for listening to my mom. Thank you for joining so I can have kibble. Kibble. Bye, guys. Bye.